Well, good evening. Thank you all for joining us. This is the second of the Hill School's Executive Functions Workshop, and this one is Homework, What Homework? A catchy title for something that is the bane of the existence of a lot of parents. Before we get started, I see you all have yourselves with video off and muted, and thank you. If you have questions during our presentation, please type them in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that while Nikki is doing the presentation. If you want to see this recording afterward, you may email me tomorrow and I'll be glad to send it to you. We're going to put it on a private YouTube channel, and we ask that you not share it with any other groups without permission from the Hill School. So our special thanks tonight to our counterparts in Durham at the Hill Learning Center. They have provided some of the materials that we use tonight and some of the inspiration. And with that, I want to introduce Nikki Snow, who is our presenter tonight. Nikki is the Associate Director at the Hill School of Wilmington and one of our lead teachers. So Nikki, up to you.
So this is the second in our three-part series. This is the second presentation, and it has to do with executive functioning. Our focus this year was to focus on executive functioning and how those executive functioning skills develop and what weaknesses look like in our students. And one area that you will see really weak with students that struggle with executive functioning is completing and returning homework. So our goal tonight is to investigate what executive functioning skills are involved in doing homework and share some tips and some strategies and some things to help out with some of these weaknesses that our students display. You may take away some things from this workshop to apply in your own home, maybe in your classroom, or maybe even for yourself. So we're all familiar with struggles like my student or my child has missing assignments or incomplete assignments, or maybe no assignments, maybe some poor test grades. I want you to be thinking about the homework routine in your home. And is it something that you dread every evening? Is it something that you look forward to? Does your child or your student have missing assignments piling up? Incomplete assignments? I don't know where my assignments are. Maybe the dog ate them. Take a minute and think about your current homework routine. Is there a routine in your house? Where does your child or the student do their homework? How long does it typically take? Maybe what some of the frustrations are, some of the challenges you face with keeping a schedule, especially as our students go up into the upper grades in the middle school, and we're navigating all these extracurricular activities along with lots of homework and study time. Just think about what's happening right now when it comes to homework, whether it's students in your classroom or in your own home. One of the hidden goals of homework and homework routines is building some habits that are going to transfer to life skills as adults. When I teach middle school. So when I talk to my students about homework, I remind them a lot that even as adults, we have homework and responsibilities that if we forget them, it's going to cause a problem. It might be I'm working on a project for work, or maybe I need to remember to do a load of laundry after work because my daughter needs her soccer uniform for the next day. These are homework. This is responsibilities that we have to do. And when things fall apart, stuff gets left behind. And completing homework is just a way to help build some responsibility. And for our students, it's a time where they can retain what they're learning. So homework time provides opportunities to work on building stronger executive functioning skills, such as working on task persistence or organization or time management, planning and prioritizing, and task initiation. So it's kind of the hidden things that are going on when we're keeping a homework schedule and a homework routine. We're really targeting and training a lot of these executive functioning skills that are going to benefit you later in life as an adult. So if you were part of our first workshop, I talked a lot about what the executive functioning skills are. So tonight's goal is to look at what executive functioning skills are involved in completing homework. Things like organization, time management, task initiation, self-control, perseverance, and working memory. These are all of the executive functioning skills that are involved in assigning homework, recording homework, bringing homework home, completing homework, and then bringing it back the next day. When you think about all of the executive functioning skills involved in a homework assignment, your child comes home, they have to find the homework assignment, maybe in the backpack or the binder, then figure out about how much time I need to get this done. I need to somehow get started on this task. I need to remain focused while I'm working on it. I need to resist the urge to get distracted or go do something else that I would rather do other than homework. I need to persevere through what I'm doing and actually follow through. And then when I'm done, I need to remember to put my homework back in my folder or back in my binder or back in my backpack. And if I have more than one assignment, I get to begin this process all over again. So when we think about go do your homework, it's pretty complex. There's a lot more involved in the thinking skills that our children have to go through. When we think about weaknesses in executive functioning skills, we know homework involves a number of executive functioning skills that I just showed you. In order to help someone grow in these areas, we work on two things at the same time. The first thing we do is we look for ways to modify the environment. And when we're modifying the environment, we're coaching the skill that the child's weak in. Many of our students struggle with executive functioning skills because at their age, they're not fully developed. And even worse is if you have a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD, then you have even bigger weaknesses in these skills. So when working to improve them, we're going to look at ways, how do you modify the environment to be more successful with homework? And then how do you coach the skills like task initiation or perseverance and persistence so the student can be successful and build some better habits? When we coach these skills, it's sort of a cycle. It starts as we're trying to help them develop some independence with collecting, completing, and returning their homework. But as an adult, it's going to start with you doing a lot of the direction. We start with a lot of adult directed. The task is completely adult directed. You have to think of yourself kind of like a coach or a mentor. And at first, you're going to direct the task at about 100%. And then as more practice occurs, you're going to take a little step back and maybe guide the process a little more. You're not doing it as much for the student or the child. As you're guiding them, the next step that we'll work towards is just monitoring. This is where the child or the student is taking more independent control. And over time, they're going to assume more responsibility for the task, but you're still monitoring it. You still have to check in. There's a lot of times that we have to use accountability and offer some corrective feedback, but your goal is to eventually be gone and be removed. And whatever it is that we're teaching the child or coaching the child to do, they can do it independently without us. But even though it's a cycle, we end up going 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes we need a little bit more direction, or we need a little bit more guidance, or maybe the adults remove themselves and the child's starting to not be as thorough with their homework, and we got to step back and do a little bit more monitoring. So as you're thinking about maybe implementing some of the strategies that we share tonight, know that it's very much a cycle, and it's almost like the gradual release model where there's a lot of modeling as a parent, you're coaching the child towards independence, and you'll see how this cycle is kind of woven through a couple of the other slides in the presentation. Homework is one of those tasks that students, they're really not motivated to do. And when we think about motivation, there's a difference between the things that we're motivated to do, but then we also have to be disciplined to do certain things. So discussing this with a student or a child or modeling this can help them understand that, you know what, sometimes in life there are things we really don't want to do and we're not really motivated to do them, but we have to discipline ourselves to do them. For example, if I told you about my daughter, things she's motivated to do, She's very motivated to go play soccer. She's motivated to go for a walk with her friends. She's self-motivated to go listen to some music, maybe watch an episode on TV, or talk to a friend on the phone. But on the other side, there's things she has to do that she has to be more disciplined to do, such as scheduling some homework time or writing down her homework assignments. These are not things she likes to do, but they're things that she has to be disciplined to do. Start studying on day one, keeping a calendar, using timers, and her dreaded task, emptying the cat litter box. So we know as adults that there's things in life that come pretty easy for us to be initiate to do or motivated to persevere through. But we also know that there's some necessary evils that we have to do, that we have to develop discipline and habits to accomplish. Homework tends to be one of those things that we need to develop some discipline to do. So let's go back to the executive functioning skills involved in doing homework. Some of the ways that we're going to look at ways to modify the environment and coach the skill, mainly looking at the green highlights. So when we think about homework, organization, time management, task initiation, and perseverance are going to be the main executive functioning skills that we look at tonight. Starting with the home environment. So let's start with, where do all the papers go that come home from school? I know many of our kids dig through their backpacks. They have soccer cleats on top of the papers. They're wadded up in the bottom of the backpack. Maybe they get tossed on the table. Maybe they're lost in the bedroom, or as the middle schoolers do, they throw them away before they even get home. One way to add an organizational piece to the environment in the home is identify a place in the house where the student can deposit finished work or important papers from school. Maybe it's the little bins that you see right here on the wall. Maybe it's paper trays laying on the counter. Maybe it's, these are kind of fancy little organizations, but maybe it's little files for each student. But a place where when I get home from school, I know I need to put all of my important papers in this bin. And it's kind of handy because it makes it so everything's in one space. But as a parent, if you have other commitments after work, or you're not getting home till late, or maybe it's a late night and the child's already gone to bed, you can still go check in with all of those things, and they're all in one central location. Having one place in the house where students deposit their papers can be really helpful in organizing and initiating the importance of bring your papers home. I want to see what you're doing. And it also saves you when, the field trip's tomorrow and the permission slip needs to be returned and no one seems to know where it is. Another way to modify the environment when it comes to homeschool homework is to actually have a scheduled homework time. We want to set a time so it becomes a habit and a routine, just like the time that you get up in the morning, or the time that you eat lunch, or the time that we have dinner. Now we know that we have to be realistic in the planning because times have to be a little bit flexible, especially as extracurricular activities start to pile up. But establishing a set scheduled homework time, and maybe you have to vary it different nights of the week depending on other commitments, but you want to set aside a time that gives sufficient time for studying and free time. So we're scheduling a little bit of time for homework, and we're also scheduling some time for free time. And you're going to see how we build in breaks as well, so you can chunk large tasks into smaller pieces. For lower school students, it's typically 30 minutes. Upper school, we're looking at 45 minutes to an hour. Middle school students, safe zone would be about an hour and a half. High school students, we're looking at 2 to 3 hours. When you look at this, it might seem like a lot at first, but you're building habits. We're teaching the student how to study. So if they decide to go on to college, they know how to study and they know how to manage time in this way. We want to be really realistic when we're making these times, and maybe we just start with 20-minute sessions that can be utilized any day of the week, or maybe even on a weekend due to extracurricular activities. But we know as adults, if we don't plan it or schedule it, we're not going to do it. So setting this up as a habit for students in homework can be one way to modify the environment to success. This is a strategy that's shared from the Hill Center. And something that they use with their students is called the nightly to-do list. So your student brings home all of their homework assignments, and maybe the school uses a planner, maybe they don't. Sits down and plans out, okay, what is it that I need to do tonight? Physically planning this out. So before even starting the homework time or the study session, they create a nightly to-do list. You can add, you see the highlighted portion right here, where I add an estimated time. About how long is it going to take me to complete this task? Just putting that on there helps a lot with students that have anxiety or students that start homework and they see this mountain that just looks like overwhelming. I can't accomplish this. It's going to take too long. This takes too much time. I know you've heard these things before. Actually estimating the amount of time it'll take helps them frame in their mind, no, I can do this. I know I've got 25 minutes to work on my ReadWorks article. I can do that for 25 minutes. And then 10 minutes, I'm going to work on completing some math equations. I might spend 5 minutes writing my topic sentences. I don't have any project work tonight. I might study for 8 minutes on my Quizlet. Mapping out what needs to be done can help the child see the big picture, but then also the little pieces that are going to be involved. And we're encouraging them to, with your guidance, estimate about how long it's going to take. Now, as this goes on, you're going to see that you want to keep a consistent sequence of homework pieces. Let me share a little bit more. For some of our students, they're more hands-on. And instead of the nightly to-do list, maybe we have, that's like a dry erase laminated checklist. Or the other one that you see on the right actually works with Velcro, where I have a task, when I'm done, I fold it up. For some students who need a more hands-on manipulative way to track their completed assignments, you can use something like that laminated checklist or the one with the Velcro, or even my older students can map out their assignments on Post-it notes and then lay them on the table next to them in a vertical line. And as each task is completed, rip the Post-it off, crumple it up, throw it in the trash. So it just gives them a physical way to look at what they're doing, the tasks that they have at hand, and monitor what's finished and how much more time I need. Typically, when we're doing homework, we encourage our students to do it in the order that matches their class schedule. So if my first class is reading, my first homework assignment that I'm going to do is going to be reading. But before you just, this is kind of general. Before you generalize and say, okay, I'll help my child do their homework in the order of their classes, I want you to think about two different kinds of students. There's an exception here. When we think about homework, there's two big problematic areas. We have the students that struggle with task initiation. It's really hard to get started. Or I get started and then I stall, and then I can't get started again. If your child struggles with task initiation, they tend to procrastinate. They might spend time in the kitchen getting some snacks, or they need to sharpen their pencil, or they can't find their paper, or maybe the binder's missing. Anything to delay the start of the task. On the flip side is a student that doesn't have any trouble getting started, but has a lot of trouble with stamina and task persistence. This is a student that starts working on homework and fatigues, and then they struggle, and they're struggling to persevere, and they really lack the stamina to work with an intense focus for a long period of time. Maybe after a long school day, they just really struggle with the energy and the mental energy to persevere. If your child or your student demonstrates struggles in either area, task initiation or stamina and task persistence, we're going to alter that homework sequence just a little bit based on that weakness. So let's take the first one. Task initiation, procrastination. I really struggle to get started. This usually applies to tasks that we find unpleasant or tedious. These are the things that we have to force ourselves to do. This executive functioning skill can be really problematic for a student who struggles to shift their focus and attention. For example, I would so much rather be playing a game than studying for my test. So if you think about task initiation, when children are very little, we actually initiate this as early as introducing new foods. I remember when I was introducing new foods to my children, you would start with a spoonful of peas, and they'd been eating peas for a few days. And then we're going to try bananas. So I'm going to feed a spoonful of peas. That's something familiar. And then I'm going to feed a spoonful of bananas. And that's sweet and it's different. And ooh, if I eat another bite of peas, then I get another bite of bananas. I'm initiating them to want to move to the next step. This is the same as when we're teaching bedtime routines. When they're really little, we drag them through the bedtime routine. Okay, it's time to get ready for bed. Let's get your pajamas. Let's go take a bath. Let's read a book. Let's crawl in bed. And slowly we pull ourselves away, and the child is able to independently manage it. And we initiate the task by saying, go get ready for bed, or it's bedtime. Some students really struggle with task initiation. There's some things that we can do to help them with that. One of them is to keep routines. Another one would be to use a timer and give start and stop times. I am more likely to start a task if I know when I'm going to be done with it. So if I say you're going to study your spelling for 5 minutes, and I know I can do this for 5 minutes, I can handle this for 5 minutes, I'm more likely to get started. Estimating the amount of time it takes to complete a task together also helps with task initiation. Prompting the child to begin the task, and this can be something verbal, or it can also be something visual. Older students, it might be leaving a Post-it note at their place at the table, reminding them to do something after school. This is where we alter the schedule a little bit. For a student that struggles with task initiation, we don't want to stress them out right out the gate. So rather than doing the hardest piece of the homework assignment, start with the easiest task. Then there's some more motivation because I just had some success. That wasn't too bad. I think I can keep going. Using a visual to-do list like that nightly to-do list, or the homework checklist, or the Velcro checklist, or even I'm going to show you the planning page that I use with my middle schoolers. I get to check the items off. That helps with task initiation because I can see what I've completed and I know what else I have to do. If you break down overwhelming tasks into smaller chunks, that can help with task initiation because I'm no longer staring at the big mountain of things I need to do. Involving the child in the plan of how and when to get the task done can be motivating, and rewarding the behavior. One of the prompts you want to encourage is, what should I be doing right now? I want to encourage the child to think metacognitively, think about their own thinking. So when I'm sitting here looking at all of my homework, what is it I should be doing right now? For students that struggle with task initiation, they benefit from beginning with the easier task. But the opposite, a student who struggles with persistence and stamina, is more like this. So Mark Twain gave us this. It says, eat a live frog first thing in the morning, and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. Well, we can take this and we can apply it to a student that struggles with task persistence and stamina. We're going to eat the frog first. And the frog is the hardest task that they have to do, or the thing that they dread the most. We're going to knock it out first. So if you struggle to complete your homework, if you're struggling to make it through the homework session, we want to knock out the hardest task first. We call it eating the frog. We want to save the easier tasks for the end. That way, when my stamina is starting to fade, I'm still being persistent, but I'm starting to fatigue, I have easier homework tasks at the end of the scheduled homework time. Again, we're going to break things down into smaller parts, involve the child in the planning, so there's buy-in, schedule some breaks, estimate the time that you need to complete the task, check things off, very motivating. Give the student something to look forward to when the task is complete. When you finish your homework, you will be doing this. When you get this far, we will do this. Using timers, offering rewards for stamina. Look how long you worked. Look how long you were able to focus on that. Not so much focused on the product of actually completing the work, but the persistence and the stamina. You didn't give up. Breaking up that homework time down into homework time, study time, and project work. That's going to help them see the light at the end of the tunnel because it's not so overwhelming and you've broken it up in a way that they can persist through it. Another way to modify the environment is having a productive study space. So as adults, we know when we get in the zone. Where is it that you go to work or when you need to intensely focus? Maybe it's a room in your house, maybe it's an office, maybe it's a coffee shop. Study space matters, and our students need an exclusive location in the house that is only for studying. Environments influence our behaviors. If I sit on the couch to relax, I don't want to confuse my body and sit on the couch to do schoolwork. I don't want to sit on my bed. That's where I sleep. Having a study space in the house helps with focus and stamina and persistence and organization and all of those executive functioning skills. It helps us limit distractions. If a student's working in their bedroom, you want to position the desk somewhere in an area that is free of distractions or blocks out distractions. You want to use good lighting. Natural light is always best. Light that's too dim or too bright can negatively affect your productivity. Something else to consider is what kinds of things go in this space. If the video games are a distraction, turn the desk where it's nowhere near a screen. Or if the child is distracted by their phone, maybe we leave the phone in the kitchen. But having a productive workspace is really important when it comes to being successful with homework. When we organize this space, we want everything in that space that you might need, and it's all within reach. Sharpened pencils, chargers, Post-it notes, index cards, notebooks, binders, anything that the child might need for homework is right there. That reduces the number of times they go looking for things. That reduces the number of times their studying is interrupted. It allows them to be more productive. Sitting on a chair, some of our students like to move. They use those exercise ball chairs or a yoga ball, maybe an office chair. We recommend that they're either at a table, a desk, or a standing desk. If the study space can have a wall calendar, I'm going to show you two examples of those. We can use that for short-term planning and long-term planning. We always want to make sure lighting and temperature is taken into consideration, and really working to reduce those distractions and helping the child be aware of what is and what is not a distraction. Wall calendars can be really effective in learning how to do short-term and long-term planning. The two that you see on here, one's just a dry erase and the other one's sticky notes. So it's flexible, it's fluid, it can move. Having this in the study space, especially with our older students, assists them in knowing I have a test on the 23rd. I need to study from the 4th to the 23rd, but I have volleyball practice on the 20th, so I need to shift my time. Having a wall calendar is a way to teach them short-term and long-term planning. And we use that with studying, we use it with projects, we use it with extracurricular activities, and it's a life skill. So I encourage my students to have a wall calendar as part of their productive study space. If it's a child that needs a timer, I recommend using one that's very visual, like the one on the left. It helps show time. A lot of our students struggle with feeling time and internalizing. How long is 5 minutes? How long is 10 minutes? Having a timer in the study space can help them internalize time and know how much time they have to complete a task or how much time they need to intensely focus. A lot of our students like to fidget when they work, and we have two types of fidgeters. We have fidgeters that are fidgeting to play, and we have fidgeters that fidget to be productive. Things like poppets, fidget cubes, stress balls, Aaron's thinking putty, bolts and screws that fit on pencils. Our kids love the bouncy bands that fit on the bottom of the chairs. If your child tends to need to move their body while they're studying or working, having a fidget in the study space can help with focus, persistence, and stamina. Now, a lot of the times when you're doing homework, it's having a snack as well. And I am one that is not, I don't support eating while you're working on your homework. I support eating in another space. So to snack or not to snack, my recommendation is not snacking while we're working on our schoolwork. You want to do your best work. And often when we're snacking on our schoolwork, we end up with things like this. That is a big smear of some sticky chocolate frosting that was all over some student work. So if the student needs a snack before, during, or after the study session, have a snack before, or build it into the homework schedule. Halfway through the homework time, you're going to take a break, go in the kitchen to get a snack, or maybe after. But I encourage my students not to be snacking during their study time. It kind of confuses the body. That's not what they're supposed to be doing during that time. One of A lot of this is built into schools, and schools have their own planners or their own way of tracking assignments. But getting in the habit of tracking your assignments is like having an adult to-do list or keeping a calendar. We encourage our students to use a student planner or a daily planning page, a calendar. Some of our students prefer technology options to track their homework assignments using their Google Calendar or on their iPhone. Some of them will use electronic notes. Most of the note apps that are in phones now can be turned into checklists, and they also have dictation options. So I can pick up my phone, I can dictate in the things that I need to do for the evening, turn it into a checklist, and then I have my assignment tracker. If your student has Google Classroom, you can have the student log into their Google account and open up the calendar. Any of the assignments that the teachers have put time due dates on will show up on their calendar. Whatever they're going to use to track their assessments, they have to track, or they're not their assessments, their assignments. They have to track their assignments. This is non-negotiable. My students will say, I don't need to write anything down. I can remember it. Oh no, yes, you do. Because your working memory gets taxed out. And the more things that you're responsible for, the more things you have to remember. So starting young with tracking assignments builds the habit, and consistency is key. Find what works and stick to it. Sometimes it takes a few trials and errors. We might work on a planner for a while, and then maybe we transition to a calendar. Sometimes we have to expose students to many different tracking forms until they find the one that works for them. So we've talked about ways to get the papers home in the house, setting up a study space, tracking assignments, but where do you put all of this homework? For some students, they prefer to have a binder per class. My students utilize a homework binder, and it's a really simplistic design, but the way that it's tabbed could be used with any class binder. So we have an identified homework binder. I call it the red binder. All of their homework goes to and from school in that binder. When you open up the binder, the first page that you see is their assignment tracking page. It's an agenda page. This one's really simplistic. They write the assignment next. The top has the date for the week and their name. They write the assignment next to the class, and then there's a box on the far right to check off their assignments. If they have extracurricular activities or other things to do, they'll write that in the to do tonight box, so they also remember they have other things going on. So in the binder, their assessment or their assignment track is right there in the first page. So when I get home, I can open that up and I know exactly what I need to do. Most of the time, these assignments are posted on the board and they copy them in. The tabbed sections of the binder, this part can be applied to any binder. I tab their binders with to do, submit, file, and tools. So anything that's assigned that's paper pencil goes in the to-do section. When they go home and they complete it and they check it off their list on the agenda page, they physically move it out of to-do and put it in submit. So when they arrive at school the next day, they can open up submit, take out their homework, and turn it in. Anything that's corrected goes into the file section, which can be returned home and shared with parents. And then the tools section would be things like multiplication charts or visuals on sentence structures, any tool that they might need to complete their homework. You could apply this idea of to-do, submit, file, and tools into any class binder, but there's a lot of power in actually having to physically pick up what I've finished, move it out of to-do and into submit. And then it's a good mental check of, did I do all my homework? Well, my to-do section's empty, so I must have done all of my homework. For younger students, this might look like a two-pocket folder. On one side, I have the things I need to do. As I finish them, I move them to the other side and deposit it into submit. One routine we do build in on every Friday, they clean this out and they empty their email inboxes. So beyond homework, a lot of our students also need to build in some study time and review time. And this is fascinating. This research shows us that first of all, when proving to kids why they need to study and review, there's a normal pattern of forgetting new information. And it's kind of scary. Generally, we forget 60% of what we've processed within new information that we're processing within 20 minutes of learning it if we don't do something with it. Most of the material is going to be forgotten in the first 8 hours. So we have to do something with this information, along with getting some good sleep, to actually commit it to long-term memory. And at a minimum, we want to be reviewing new information 3 times at different intervals. So as part of homework time, we also need to build in some study time. And we always tell the students, studying begins on day 1. If you're starting a new unit, that's when you start studying, not the day before the test. Studying begins on day 1. We're going to track upcoming tests on our wall calendar. Then we're going to make a study plan. What days are we going to study? What times are we going to study? And what strategies are we going to use to study the material? We're going to learn some effective ways to study for specific subject areas. And then after we take a performance measure like a test, we're going to reflect on our study plan. How'd I do? What strategies worked? Which ones didn't? Did I spend enough time studying? And then what might I do differently next time? Learning's also consolidated during sleep. So a night spent staying awake cramming for a test is likely to produce a less than optimal result and also force memorization rather than true learning. So study time is also built into our homework time. Another component that might have to be built into homework time is project planning. Most of the time, our students can see the big picture and they know what the finished product needs to look like, but they have difficulty managing the steps and how to get there. For example, my daughter came home and said, "Mom, we're doing a science fair project." And the first thing she wanted to do was go buy the project board. When attacking a big project, it helps to map it out and make a plan. And this can be something done on paper pencil and then added to the wall calendar. And when attacking this, putting a plan in place helps so we're not going to procrastinate to the last minute and facilitate some time management. So what happens when your student comes home and says, "Guess what? I don't have any homework"? My response is, fantastic. Keep your scheduled time. Use that time. You can use it for studying. You can use it to work on a project, maybe to process some notes that you took in class. Tell somebody in the house what you learned about that day. Play a game together. Listen to an audiobook. Watch a documentary that supports what you're studying in science or social studies, or maybe even listen to a podcast. Keep the scheduled homework time. Even if there isn't a mountain of homework, you can still use it productively.
Tell me how familiar this sounds to you. You've got some work to do, so you pack up your backpack, you find the perfect study space. Perfect amount of sunlight, plenty of space to work in, a little bit of nature thrown in, a fatherly picture of Nick Offerman staring down at you. You bring yourself a fresh cup.
I'm going to share that link with you later on. Thomas Frank does an awesome series on YouTube about study habits and productivity, and I'll send that to you via email. It's a little long. He has a lot to say about intense focus and focusing yourself in your study area. And this is a good video for adults, but also good for middle school students. And I know I'm looking at the audience tonight. We're not all at the same space. So I'll send that via email and you can take a look at it. It's worth sharing if you have a middle schooler. It's worth sharing together. But he just gives some really useful tips about everyday life and in learning how to work in a study session with an intense focus. So one of the keys to homework success by far is accountability. Having those boxes checked on the agenda is essential. Maybe for a while, the teacher needs to check in with the student, or I have a student where the parent signs off on the agenda, knowing that the student has completed the assignments, and it helps also, with the communication between home and school. Maybe the student is one that's rushing to get out the door at the end of the day, and they need a study buddy for accountability. This is a peer in the classroom that comes over and says, "Hey, do you have your homework binder? Is it in your backpack? Do you have the things you need?" We can offer short-term rewards for accountability and some long-term rewards as well. We can share on Google Calendar and Google Classroom as a way for accountability, but there has to be something in there where if I'm asking you to track your assignments, I'm also holding you accountable for it, because if I don't hold you accountable for it, you're not going to do it. At home, I find that we hold our students accountable verbally. Often we say, "Do you have homework?" And the response is yes, no, I don't know, maybe. Instead of being general like that, we really need to be specific and say things like, what is your math assignment? Making that student really think about what is it that I have to do for homework, not a general statement such as, do you have homework? When they're finished, we often say, did you do your homework? Well, that might mean, yeah, I did my homework. I did 5 minutes of it, or I did part of it, or maybe I did my reading homework, but not my math homework, but I did my homework. When we're asking questions for accountability, we want to make sure we're really specific. So rather than saying, do you have homework? Ask specifically, what's your math assignment? What homework do you have in reading? Or if we're finished with a study session and we say, did you do your homework? How about, did you complete your math homework? Or can I see your agenda page? Did you check off your assignments? Being specific can really help with accountability. Maybe we have to ask to see that planner or the checks on the side of the laminated checklist that the student has. Really asking specific questions rather than, do you have homework? Did you do your homework? Now, another thing that we hear a lot is, oh, it's not due till Friday, or she gave us extra time. Well, we know that Friday arrives quick and we've procrastinated and now we're not prepared. A lot of students have options for extended time, and we want to caution extended time and putting things off because it really does just lead to procrastination. Now, during a study session, a lot of our kids are doing homework online, or they have to use technology to complete digital assignments. And we know as adults how distracting that can be. I can have 30 tabs open on a Chrome browser, or multiple apps open on my phone. There's helpful things out there in settings on a lot of devices. What I'm showing you on this one is one that exists on an iPad. Let's say the student has to do an assignment on Google Classroom. It's a digital assignment, they're using an iPad. You can use guided access within an iPad. This will lock your child into the app that they're working on and not allow them to open anything else up during the study session. It's pretty handy. It works like a parental control. You put in a passcode and the child is locked in that app or that activity until they bring it to you and you unlock it with the passcode. This helps reduce distractions. It helps keep them focused. It also helps with impulse control and self-control until they've grown enough to independently manage those things. There's a lot of homework resources out there. My students, I'll send them off to Khan Academy to show them something another way. They utilize apps like Grammarly when they're when they're writing or when they're word processing. They might practice more math on Cool Math different ways in a gaming format. They make their own study flashcards on Quizlet or attempt a game on a website called Quizzes. There's a lot of technology we can use for homework that allows more accessibility, such as there's an app called Prismo Go. This is an Apple product, and it allows you to take a picture of anything that's text and it'll turn it audio. So if your child brings home a really long reading passage, or they have a worksheet that they need to do and they're struggling with the text that's on the page, you can take a photo of it with this app. It'll download it into a box that looks like a Word document, and then it will read it aloud to the student, highlighting it as it goes across. Google Read and Write is another one that does the same thing. I teach my students to edit by ear by highlighting what they write, and it reads it back to them. It works a lot like Prismo Go. You can utilize websites for science and social studies like How Stuff Works. There's another one called Socratic. Great way to support social studies would be watching documentaries together, visiting YouTube for other videos, maybe listening to a podcast, or we're going to explore things on a virtual field trip, utilizing an app like Google Earth. Homework can be really overwhelming, both to parents and students and teachers. Just a few more tips for success. Start small. Maybe you just start with putting a homework bin in your house, or putting a homework binder together, or coming up with a wall calendar. Maybe you're going to set up a productive space. It's really important to involve the child in the planning process. It helps with buy-in, help them own it by involving them in the process. Be real, share examples of how these habits transfer to adult life. Be open to revising your plan when it doesn't work out. Sometimes the way we think organization would work and set up doesn't work right for the child. So we have to go back to the drawing board and start again. This one's probably the toughest. Be ready to quickly see that your executive functioning strengths are often not the strengths of the child. So what comes easy to you often doesn't come easy to the child, and that's a little frustrating. If your child is easily distracted or tends to have trouble filtering their thoughts, a recommendation is to put a notebook next to them while they're doing their homework, or a Post-it note. That way, when something pops into their head, such as, oh, I need to remember to talk to so-and-so, or I need to remember to do this, they learn to jot that distraction down on that Post-it note and cast it aside. It's no longer taking up space in working memory. I got it down on paper, so I'm not going to forget it, and I can come back to it later. It's teaching them to filter thought, but then also reflectively, by looking at that, they can see what some of their distractions are. We also want to remember to offer some rewards. A lot of our students and children need a little extrinsic motivation. So we want to reward the behaviors and praise their progress. Not necessarily just the product of getting the homework done or getting it correct, but the process, the persistence, the perseverance, the organization, rewarding those behaviors, because these are habits that transfer to adult life and create independence. So I'm going to stop there, and if we can all join each other and maybe entertain a few questions. Amy, the assignment tracker that I made, the generic one on there, I do use with just the middle schoolers, but it's very specific to our school because it only has reading, writing, and math on there. But I can gladly share that with you if you wanted to use that as a starting piece.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
And even the planners that you can buy in the store, the reason I made that one is those planners tend to be a little overwhelming. There's a box for everything, and I don't always have an everything for those boxes. So for a child, organizing that can be a little overwhelming. So just creating a simple 2-column table or a 3-column table tends to be more effective, but I'll gladly share that one with you.
I think it'll be a good to get them started on that. I mean, I model all the planners. I have the paper planners and everything, but he might not quite be ready, but I think that would be a good starting point.
And if it's something you want to use, sharing with the instructor too, just making sure it's in the binder, it's ready to go, and then signing off or checking it off. Yeah, it's a great way to start.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. My daughter is in 4th grade, and I was just wondering, I feel like just being at Hill School allows her to gradually learn a lot of, these strategies. I'm trying to figure out at what, so this was incredibly helpful, I have to say, first of all, and I got a lot of inspiration, but I'm thinking more about long-term, like the transition to middle school and high school. Can you speak a little bit about what is expected, and especially like in public high school? If you could address some of that.
Sure. So you already know that the amount of homework our Hill School students bring home is significantly less than what you're going to see out there in the public school. So by doing what I'm sharing with you in this presentation, you're building a habit. That way, that habit is in place, no matter if I have 20 minutes of homework or if I have 2 hours of homework. I'm building that habit. So I'm getting in the habit of writing my assignments down, putting them in my binder, bringing my binder home, sitting down in my study space, doing my homework, walking through those things, and slowly building the habit. So then we can increase the length of time and build that persistence, because we know the guideline is 10 minutes times the grade level. But the problem with our students is they struggle. So they're always going to work harder and longer than other students. So my focus, with 4th grade and up, the focus is building the habit and then slowly building the stamina over time. Does that help? Okay. Those Yasmin, those strategies though, I mean, even when you're looking at, let's say you're looking at, a 10th grade student who's sitting there with 8 core courses, AP classes, and all this work, even using those same guidelines of having the sequence and the scheduled breaks and things like that, if we build those habits now, that'll transfer later on.
I think too, well, and I don't know if a lot of the other parents on here have older kids, but with my daughter, many days she's sort of like in the right mood to do homework, but every once in a while it is torture. And so, like that's another piece for me. It's like a lot of times, I would say most of the time she's fine, but though there are just certain days, and sometimes she's hangry, sometimes it's something else, but yeah, every time I think we're like, okay, we're hitting our stride with this, and then all of a sudden she'll be like in tears, and I'm not good at math, and and it, and I think maybe I'm a little too sensitive to it because because she needs extra help, right?
And that's also one of the reasons why they say to build in 20 minutes on a Saturday as well, because you're going to have an off day.
Okay.
You're going to have a night where you have soccer practice till 9, and then we're eating dinner, and it's recommended that you have this time built in and include a Saturday. That way it's a fallback, or it could be, hey, it's Saturday, let's watch a documentary on something you're learning in social studies. It doesn't have to be a sit down and do 50 algebra problems, but building it on the weekend kind of gives you a grace period. So if you have a rough go, you still have a fallback.
Thank you.
And just to add, I think also, Yasmin, what you're seeing is what building stamina looks like. That is, stamina is the muscle, that you're building. And sometimes, the workout just isn't going well. And, I don't think you said you're concerned you're too sensitive about it. I think you need to give yourself grace and say, we're going to have days like that, days that the workout at the gym doesn't go well and days that homework doesn't go well, but that's what building stamina is.
Thank you both very much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Well, if not, I'll be glad to email you this video tomorrow if you want to just let me know that you'd like to have the link to it. We also have the slides. Nikki, is that right?
Yes.
I can send you those as well. And if you are a teacher and interested in getting credit for participating tonight, I sent something earlier today to let you know about that. So just send me an email if you want to follow up with the credit certificate. And if that's all, Nikki, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'll send a link, and then they can check out the Thomas Frank series.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. And our next session is going to be, I don't have the date in front of me, but it's the 3rd Thursday in March, I think. And our topic is I Quit. Reference the earlier conversation about stamina. So Nikki's remarks will be about building stamina and helping students to get through the rough times. Okay, well, thank you all. Have a good rest of the evening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.